Yeah, I live in a apartment complex. It's not quite in the downtown area of the city. I'm in Pittsburgh, but it's in the suburbs and it's still kind of more city. So I'm hoping when I move, when my lease is up in July, I can find a place that's a little more quiet. And I think that'll be good for recording as well as my general sanity. Because I don't know, I've been living in apartment living for years now. And I mean, I was living in apartments even while I was still in college. So for me, I'm kind of just need my space, you know, that. And then also since my spiritual awakening, I've been able to understand some of my mood shifts and whatever, and realizing that picking up on other people's energies affects me way more than I ever thought it did. And I think it was something that had always been the case, but because I wasn't aware of like being an empath, and bless you, hon. That was my cat. But actually, let me pull out a chair for him because sometimes he likes to just participate and he'll just sit and watch. So I'm gonna do that real fast because he's adorable like that. But yeah, it's kind of interesting how when you get older and you start learning about different things, how it really opens your eyes to who you are as a person, as well as how much everybody around you really affects you, you know? There's one thing that, so before I got into all the spiritual stuff, I was learning about this concept called morphic resonance, which to me is super fascinating, because I was never into tarot prior to about 2 years ago, and my zodiac sign, I'm a Scorpio. So if you're referring to like astrology zodiac, I'm also the dog in Chinese zodiac. I was gonna say my outfit, actually kind of looking at it, I'm like, this is definitely Scorpio vibes. But yeah, so morphic resonance though, which is a biological explanation for energies. And it's kind of cool because scientists are starting to be able to track energy and how the collective unconscious, how when you get like a group of people together, how one person can think a thought and then subconsciously affects the collective. And they were doing studies on mice and different things, and they were finding that around the world, generationally, mice would learn things from across continents. And there's obviously no real logical explanation for why a mouse in London could be generationally learning different patterns in Australia or in the US, you know what I mean? And so that's how the concept of like morphic resonance and collective unconscious was been starting to be discovered. And I find it super interesting, and it makes me feel a little bit better when it comes to explaining things like, say for example, somehow your dog knows when you're going to come home right before you come home, and even if you change your pattern, you know, or for example, when you think of somebody right before they text them, morphic fields, man. I was gonna say, ever since I learned about it, it's been explaining so many weird little things. Again, I've had multiple different spiritual awakenings kind of going on to that, and then I had that experience with Rachel, which you guys learned about last time. And so now I'm kind of in this weird place where I just, anything goes. Anything goes. I mean, I can't really explain things anymore. I used to be a very pragmatic and scientific person. I was a little bit religious. I mean, I believed in God and whatnot, but I wasn't really into like crystals or alternative stuff and whatever. And it's really just been kind of within the last 3 years that I've kind of gotten into it, because it started with energy work and therapy, and then now it's kind of evolved as I've, again, third eye opened, and then suddenly everything's out the window. But I mean, I realized though, since I was a kid, I've always had weird things. Like I've had prophetic dreams. Usually dreams were the big thing that I encountered a lot, where I've always had dreams about places before I visited them. And I think what was really cool was the first time I realized that was happening was I went to Disney World when I was younger. And there was a very specific place in Disney World where it was like a playground that was indoors. So it's not something that you would see on a brochure or on a video. And so I knew I'd never been there before. But I remember arriving and looking at it, and it looked a little different from the dream. But I remember just sitting there feeling like I've been here before. And so there's been like weird little things like that. Like when I went to Vegas, there's like this big indoor mall that there was a one specific place that I was like, oh my gosh, I've had dreams about this place multiple times. And I know for sure, like I've never been to Europe, but I have a feeling I'm going to end up going because there's some European style dreams I've had in the future. So the good news is I think I'm not going to die anytime soon based off of the frequency of my dreams. But at the same time also, sometimes they're random. Sometimes it's imagination. It's really hard to tell. So that's where it's been interesting trying to figure out how spirituality, applies nowadays. And again, understanding your own stuff, because I feel like everybody can be spiritual if they want to. And I mean, for me personally, I would love to find like an atheist or a person who struggles with spirituality just to kind of test some things out. Because to me, even when I was, I was raised Lutheran, a Protestant Christian denomination, and I was finding that I was going to church, and I mean, it wasn't that I ever didn't believe in God, but I'd never believed in the version that was being taught. And it would be strange because I'd enjoy sometimes going to church because I loved like the feeling, the spirituality, but I kept feeling that this wasn't the place for me. And so eventually I just decided that like Christianity just didn't fit with me, even though, again, I love really passionate Christians. Like as you saw with Rachel, she's very Christian. And I've met other ones that, people that truly practice their faith. They're really cool people. But what I was beginning to question was, how does this all tie together? And how is it that you can get people from all around the world believing in very similar things or seeing symbols or different things like that? And I used to sit there and try to rationalize it and be like, well, maybe it's something from a collective unconscious from like, if humanity started in, Ethiopia or whatever, then obviously we all have common ancestors. So maybe that was just passed down and that's why it spread out. But I think there's a lot more to it than that. And then again, with all the spiritual shit, I mean, it's everything that I used to never believe in ghosts. Now I do. Encountering ghosts is very interesting. Or again, just weird things where I've been able to predict people's or tapped into people's energies. So when I was doing, I'm going to be getting trained on this one thing called family constellation work, which it's very hard to explain in words without witnessing it. So I'm not going to get too much into it, but basically the gist of it is you take a client and they propose an issue, and then what you do is you use other people to energetically replay the situation, and then you can heal whatever's going on in their energy field. So maybe it's say they always have issues with relationships, and so then what you do is using people, you can have them reenact what was going on in their family history, heal the wound from the family trauma, and then it not only heals the client, but also heals everyone in that family system and everyone who participates in the constellation work. And so again, I learned about it in therapy, and because it was a thing that my therapist did outside of therapy. So she's like, if you're interested, you can join. And I mean, I got really good at it. And so what was happening was I would show up and I'd be standing there as a representative for somebody I never knew. And I mean, I could pick up on weird things about their relatives. Like it would be sitting there being like, oh yeah, like if I was representing someone's brother. Oh yeah, there was one I did where I was representing someone's brother, and then there was another person who was also my brother, and there was a family feud going on, like back in Italy or something. But I remember standing there in this guy's energy, and I remember looking at the person who was representing the brother, and I was like, we used to have a lot of inside jokes. like I always get the weird sassy family member because that's just what I resonate with. But it was just so strange because I was sitting there feeling like, oh yeah, I remember that one time, but then it would be like my mouth would be opened and then nothing would come out. And that's when I started to believe in this energy work because I was so good at it. Like clients would be like, how did you know that? I don't know you at all. And I'm like, I don't know you either. I don't know what's going on. And then there was another time where I was at that same, it was a same type of workshop, different time, where I actually saw auras for the first time. I've never been able to replicate it, which is very frustrating to me because it was super cool when it happened. But basically, so anybody can technically see their auras, so the way I was taught is, so you're supposed to take your hand, and then you have to have a white background, because if you have other colors kind of in your peripheral vision, it will throw off your mind's ability to actually tap into your intuition as opposed to using your brain. And so usually like a white background, and so you look at the white background and you stare right here, and you're supposed to kind of be in a meditative state, and then eventually you might see a color. Well, so these two ladies were kind of talking about it, and I was like, and they were like, yeah, it takes me a while to kind of see it. And I just kind of looked up at the ceiling. I was like, oh, I'm green. And then they were like, oh, I mean, okay, well, I mean, you can look at other people's if you just kind of like look at your hand and then look like this at another person. And so I did that for them, and I could see theirs very distinctly, and so I relayed to them what I thought theirs looked like, and because they had had theirs read before, they knew what it looked like, and I guess I was correct. So then I ended up reading everyone's aura in the room, which was, so auras, I don't know how people typically describe them, because again, I'm still very new to this, but the way I kind of see auras, they literally look like gas floating around a person. And like, I've never seen a person's aura that had only just one color. There's usually different shades, or like the one person that I saw, their aura, it was just all red, but it was different shades of red. And then when she slightly turned, I saw like purple behind her. So I've been trying to do a little bit more research on it, but I haven't been able to replicate it. And I'm so sad that I can't do it, because what I wanted to do is, if I could sit there and read a person's aura in my head, I wanted to like do paintings for people where I could be like, okay, like here's your body, and then paint what their aura looks like, so that way they could be able to see it for themselves. But I don't know, I don't have a really full grasp on things quite yet. Plus also people's auras change over time, so that also doesn't help. But what I found, especially if you think you're an intuitive, or I think this helps in general, and probably why constellation work is, when you're tapping into intuition, if you have multiple people around you, that makes it way, way, way easier to tap into your intuition. Because I don't know if it's, especially like if you're with other intuitives, something about having that collective strength, it kind of lifts a little bit of a burden. So for example, me being by myself, I like having crystals around, so that way it can kind of help give me some grounding whenever I'm encountering these things, versus when you're with a bunch of people, you're already kind of safe because that energy's there. So I've been in groups where, like with groups of other intuitives, and suddenly you're just getting in all kinds of messages. Or I did a dream interpretation class, and it was cool because everyone would be interpreting each other's dreams, and everyone could see the dream in their head, but they saw different angles of it. And so then whenever I would tap into something, it would suddenly be like bam, bam, bam. Like I'd be like, all right, you've got something with your grandmother, you've got like, you know, this one thing right here, and it just like goes crazy. And the lady facilitating told me that I need to meditate more and slow down, because as she put it, my intuition kind of works like a machine gun. It's probably the ADHD. I'm also just a hyper lively person, so it's really hard to slow down and just kind of like get the messages fully. But yeah, so that's just me rambling. But let me see what you guys said in the comments. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I'm totally willing to test stuff out. But yeah, give it a shot. Like you kind of, it's like you don't force it. And I mean, I don't know if either of you have done any type of like intuitive work before, but geez, just spilled water all over my face. But when it comes to being able to tell if you're actually tapping into your intuition. It's kind of like, I usually feel it in the back of my head, even though, so technically your third eye is supposed to be like right here. Mine is like right here, because whenever I'm getting a little too much information or it's opening, it kind of hurts in this one little spot. But typically whenever I'm, for example, say I encounter a ghost. All right, we'll just say that, because there's ghosts, energies, whatever, it's all very similar. So I kind of, the way I experience it is it's almost like whenever you're reading a book, you're seeing words and then you have images in your head, right? The images in your head is just like what happens when you see the ghost. So it's almost like imagination, but the way you can feel it is, first of all, usually I feel like some kind of a tension in the back of my head, plus I feel it in different places in my body. So in the case of a ghost, for example, I usually feel like this creepy whatever, and so in my head, even though I physically can't see the ghost in front of me, in my head I see an image of, okay, this person is there. And again, when I was first tapping into this stuff, I always chalked it up as it's my imagination because I'm a very creative person, but you can usually feel the difference, because usually it physically has a feeling in your head, as opposed to when you're imagining things, you just kind of just do your thing.